Happy Thanksgiving, Nathan.
Oh, thanks, but you're late by several days. Anyway, happy Thanksgiving, Tyler.
Thanks, but you're late by several weeks.
I suppose that's true. Hello, and welcome to Ignore the Bell. My name is Nathan,
And I'm Tyler.
and we are doing a very special Thanksgiving edition of the podcast. Now, I do want to clarify this because I've heard a number of Americans, some Americans will just genuinely ask the question, do you have Thanksgiving in Canada? And then other Americans will just say, America is the only place in the world, the only country that has Thanksgiving. And I'm like, that's not true. Canada does celebrate Thanksgiving, but we go the second Monday in October. And in the United States, it's the third Thursday in November. Is it the third one? It's got to be, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, it is. It's very strange to me why Thanksgiving in the States is so late. To me, because it's just like it gets so close to Christmas down there.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah, it seems strange to me as well because Canadian Thanksgiving, in terms of the calendar year, makes more sense. Not even if you're talking about the harvest, because although you do have a much earlier harvest up north,
Yeah.
but it makes so much more sense because you haven't seen your relatives in a long time by early October, right? And even if you
Yeah.
did see them in the summer, it's been a little bit. So you get to visit with them, and then you don't have to see them again until Christmas. So you get a good break in between there. But the idea of seeing people, and it's like, oh, it's so good to see you at Thanksgiving at the end of November, and then a month later you have to see those maniacs again. Ugh. I, no
Yeah,
wonder, no wonder
you
Americans are on
haven't
edge all the time.
forgotten, right? You haven't forgotten all the bad things about those relatives.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. You need to have a little bit of distance to establish some nostalgia because if it's too close, then it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Um,
Now we do have a sponsor for today's episode
we
as
do.
well. And today's sponsor is I Can't Believe It's Not Butterball. So for when you want maybe perhaps a healthier alternative, we're not really going to call it turkey, but it's something similar to turkey. So yeah, you can buy it's I can't believe it's not Butterball.
Great. From a culinary standard, it's turkey adjacent.
Right, yes.
It's
A
not quite
turkey
turkey.
substitute.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's just as good as the original, but not really.
You won't be able to tell the difference.
Yeah. And that's not concerning at all. Now, I should explain before we get into the actual podcast. So, basically, what we're going to be doing is we're going to give a little bit of an overview of some of our favorite TV shows that have focused on Thanksgiving. That's basically it. We're just going to give a few different highlights of different shows. So, we're kind of going to do a back and forth where I'll go over a TV series, you go over one, and we'll do. I don't know what happened there. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so I was just saying that we'll have a little bit of a back and forth where I share a couple TV series and then you share some, and we just talk about these good Thanksgiving moments that we've seen in television.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. There are so many shows that have Thanksgiving episodes, but some series definitely do it better just by the nature of the show. And yeah, it'll be fun to talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, I hope you enjoy.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the. We're gonna keep going, people.
All right, so we're going to be sharing some of our favorite moments from television that focus on Thanksgiving. And so the first one that I want to talk about is Roseanne. So Roseanne has, I think, in a lot of ways, Roseanne can get the credit for really establishing holiday episodes with sitcoms. And I'm sure, and I mean, I have watched plenty of sitcoms going back all the way to, the 1950s, whether it's, I Love Lucy and the Honeymooners and kind of everything along the way. I've watched a lot of sitcoms over the years, but I think Roseanne did a better job than most other shows when it comes to having holiday themed episodes. And so they really established Halloween episodes. They did a really good job with that. The Simpsons
Right.
at the same time, like they were contemporaneous shows, and obviously The Simpsons continues to this day. But Roseanne kind of got there first, especially with the Thanksgiving episodes. So they had good Halloween episodes, Thanksgiving episodes, and if you look, and I was just doing a little bit of review because I remember all of these good Thanksgiving episodes of Roseanne, and it's like they literally titled them like Thanksgiving 91. Thanksgiving
Mm,
93. Like it was just, this is the Thanksgiving episode for the year. And then like Christmas episodes and so on. And
right. And
so
that's so fitting for that's how you would have that photo album labeled, right? And that's
yeah,
perfect for the show.
yeah, exactly. And so from that standpoint, that's one thing that I really appreciate about Roseanne is you've got a different focus on each holiday. So you kind of when you're watching the show, then it matches up with what's going on in your own life because this is of course going back to traditional television. So you're watching these episodes and it's like, yeah, Thanksgiving is coming up. Oh, we get our Thanksgiving episode, or Halloween's coming up. We get the Halloween episodes. And to kind of so that's a big part of it. And then with the other shows that we're going to talk about, then you're going to see that they've kind of taken that same approach with different holiday themed episodes throughout the calendar year. And I really do think that Roseanne did a good job in establishing that. So that's the first thing that I appreciate with it. The other thing is Roseanne as a series, but in particular with, well, maybe not in particular, but with the Thanksgiving episodes, you do get to have a really good sense of the fact that it is trying to depict a pretty realistic family. And a lot of people, they might look at it and they might say that Roseanne is depicting a dysfunctional family, but I don't think that's the case because it's I would describe the show as kind of being gritty would be
Mm,
maybe a good way of describing it. I know that Roseanne herself, I've heard her talk about this, since the series ended, that really what it did more than any other show is it showed a family on television who was poor. It wasn't a
right.
middle class family, it was a lower class family.
Yeah.
And to show what that actually looks like and feels like, and to see conversations on screen about struggling with bills and struggling with raising kids and struggling with trying to find good employment and
Yeah.
seeing fights and all of that stuff. And it's like families that don't have fights where everything seems good, it doesn't mean that everything's good. It typically means that everything is just being really, really repressed. And in a lot of ways, that's much more unhealthy, right?
Yeah. 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 No, and that really reminds me again of The Simpsons. I think it's the Christmas episode when Homer brings them around oh no, it's not even a Christmas episode. It's just a random episode where Homer like brings them around the neighborhood to look in and see how all the other families are definitely just like theirs.
Right.
But then you're looking through the windows and it's the smiling father carving the turkey and everything. And it's like, oh, maybe we are just really,
Right.
really odd.
Right.
But yeah, no, Roseanne is just like, this is just normal. It's not like it's because that is how so many people live. They live, not necessarily, um, on the streets or anything, but like below the poverty line,
Yeah.
right?
Or
And
at least right at the poverty line.
right, yeah, and to see that depicted so well, and how that's not everything that the show is about, but it is a framework for the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for so many families, well, I know that this is the case. When they watched Roseanne, it was satisfying to be able to kind of see their family on TV.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, because, and there's just so much of television, especially from the 80s and getting into the 90s, where it's so inauthentic. I
Mhm.
mean, especially if you're looking at like what I'm trying to, I can't remember which channel it was. I want to say maybe ABC, where it was TGIF, right? Where they would have,
Oh yes.
and like I'm trying to think back on the shows. I think it was like Family Matters and Step by Step, and um, of course, you've got, oh, what's the other?
Um,
Full House. Full House is like the big
oh
one,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like you look at a show like Full House, and you're just like, it is so like,
Who can relate to that?
yeah,
Who?
who? Honestly, who can relate to that? I don't understand. Um, it's just
Yeah.
completely unrealistic, and it's like they're living so much of television from that era was depicting a reality that has never existed and will never exist. And some people
And
might
then and
go,
then with those episodes, when they or with those shows, when they do an episode that's like, oh, we're really struggling to pay the bills, it's like, no, you're not.
right. Yeah, exactly. That's 100% it. It's no, you're not. Um, yeah, and so there, like, I could go on and on about how much I love that aspect of Roseanne, and like it's why I don't really like other TV shows. Other TV shows that are, like I say, like kind of that TGIF lineup. It just they didn't make any sense to me. And I mean, like I'll share this, like uh, that we didn't grow up middle class.
Right.
um, you know, our household looked a whole lot more like what you see with the Connors than what you get with anything else, that was on television at the time. And so
Yeah.
the Thanksgiving episodes, to me, the great thing is that there's often there there's usually some kind of big revelation during the episodes, but it makes sense. It's a fairly organic reveal of the big confrontation that you get at Thanksgiving, but usually there's a big fight, essentially, is what's
Right.
happening here. And to me, it makes perfect sense. Some people might say, well, this is contrived. And I'm like, no, it's not. If you invite family members over who don't see each other all the time, and they're now at different points in their life where they've got different stuff going on, and you've got different family members who are then trying, like, the dynamics between them, you're going to get a clash there. And that doesn't mean that they're not a good family. It doesn't
Right.
mean that they're so messed up. Like, what I appreciate about Roseanne and these Thanksgiving episodes is that it's all right there. It's all out in the open, because all of these other families that, middle class families where it looks like they have no problems, it's like, especially the older I've gotten, the more I've realized, I'm like, oh man, there's serious problems, but they just hid them so well from everybody
Right.
else. And it's like, it ultimately does far more trauma, where it's like, oh, I've resented my mother for like 35 years. And then it's just like, why don't you just tell her, hey, I'm mad at you? Like, I don't,
Right.
like, that just seems so much
Yeah.
healthier to just have it out in the open.
Yeah, it's yeah, oh, I'm frustrated, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to go off into the bedroom and, wait for the life partner to come join me and
Yeah.
yeah, and calm me down and tell me that it's going to be okay and all that. And it's just like, no.
Yeah, that's right. Having that sentimental, like, piano music starting to play, and it's just
Yeah.
like,
I know
oh.
that sometimes they can be a little much.
Right, exactly. And yeah, Roseanne was just like, what on earth is this nonsense? Like, if there are families like that, then they're definitely, that's not healthy, because they're just
Yeah.
disguising this, and it's going to show up in therapy for decades for these kids.
Yeah,
Right? So
for
anyway,
sure.
I appreciate that, because like I say, they're still family members. They still come together for Thanksgiving, even though they've had fights, even though they disagree and they don't always get along. But it's like, but they are a family and they care for each other. And I think for a lot of people, they have these expectations of, you're not a good family, or you're not a healthy or a happy family unless everything looks the way it does in the movies or on television, right? Where we've got
Right.
these idealized notions of what a healthy family looks like. And I think that that often causes a lot of disappointment for people. right? And that's where I think a lot of conflict ends up coming from, is because it's like, well, this is what a good family looks like, and so we have to meet that ideal, and if not, then we're somehow failing. And Roseanne just seemed to just, ignore that and just say, that's nonsense. It's just, you're a family because you're related and you care for each other whether you get along or not. That, like, you fight through it.
Yep.
And I think that's great.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, no, I agree, and I wasn't the biggest fan of Roseanne, but I think in large part just because of how old I was
Yeah.
when the show came out.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate everything that it did for depicting that, uh, yeah, the lower class. That was
Yeah.
yeah, really really
Well,
brilliant, and I think that if I rewatched it, I would absolutely love the series.
I
Yeah.
think so too. And I think it's because you got spoiled, because you got to see all of the shows that were influenced by Roseanne, or if
Right.
not influenced, where the groundwork was, like, the foundation was already laid by the show, and it
Mhm.
it, it proved to all of these television producers that you can depict more realistic families, you can depict lower class families. It doesn't have to be this ultra saccharine sentiment, like sentimental, ridiculous ideal of a family on television, that you can have
Yeah.
pretty realistic situations and problems. And so you got to see all of these things after Roseanne, like, was the first one to do it. But, like, because I was young enough where I'm like, there's nothing else like this on TV. This is so
Mm,
great. Um,
right.
yeah. So I
All
think
right.
that's why, like, it works really well for me.
Gotcha.
All right. I want to hear yours.
Yeah, I think I will start off with a show that is currently still on the air, which is The Goldbergs. And it is very heavily based on the true life stories of Adam Goldberg, Adam F. Goldberg, I believe. And so it is in, I believe it's seventh season now, and it has so far had six different Thanksgiving episodes.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it is, and it really is perfectly suited for that because it is all about this this family where the mother cares too much, the smother, as it were,
Hmm.
and the kids are kind of just like, yeah, just let me kind of go off and do my own thing,
Hmm.
and yeah, so there is like all sorts of tension in the family, and it's not about like, oh man, I just want to spend time with you and whatever. Like it is um, different in that sense. And so most of the Thanksgiving episodes, and I haven't seen all of them, I'm not up to date on the series, but in general, then it's about the mother trying to host this perfect Thanksgiving, and about either one of the kids is like, oh, I want to spend it over at my boyfriend or girlfriend's house this year,
Hmm.
or or certain family members are just like, oh, um let's do the turkey in what's it called? Like when you've got the outdoor boiling pot
Oh,
thing.
like a deep fryer,
Yes,
like a
yeah.
turkey
They're like,
fryer.
yeah, yes, yeah. Let's do the turkey fryer this time. And it's just so much of the mother, because the show is so based around the mother being overbearing,
Hmm.
and because it's based on true life things, like they actually
Right.
show clips from um, from their home videos at the end of each episode to prove that some of these things
Right.
really did happen.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I think that it just works so well because the show is all about family, and it's all about an overbearing mother who just wants everything to be perfect, wants everybody to be together, and the kids don't want that, which is so real. It's so
Right.
true.
Right.
It's like, I don't want to sit here and eat with grandpa, whatever, and everything.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny because I was thinking about this, like, with the shows that I like, especially when it comes to, like, these holiday episodes. then it's usually where it doesn't go well.
Right.
And the reason why I think I like that is if you're like basically if you know anything about children, then you know the one day of the year, like if you were to place a bet on what day of the year is this kid definitely going to cry, it's going to be the kid's birthday, right?
Right.
Like almost every kid cries on his or her birthday, and there's a reason for that. The reason is that the expectations are up here,
Yeah.
right? And then if things don't go perfectly and if it doesn't match that vision that this kid has, and like they've got all their friends who come over for this birthday party and it's my birthday, it's supposed to be this. It's my birthday, it's supposed to be this. So you've got these expectations of being so elevated that if anything goes wrong, then it's you ruined my birthday.
Right.
Right? And it's like you take that and then you just apply it to adults, and it's like, but it's Thanksgiving, or but
Right.
it's Christmas. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
it's usually like the matriarch who is
Mhm.
really like pushing for this of I have this vision of what this is going to be, and if it doesn't meet this vision, then it's all a disaster, and everybody else is
Yes.
like, would you just mellow out?
Right. Yeah. So what if Uncle whoever isn't coming this year? It's not that big of a deal. And it's like,
Not a
no,
big
everybody has to be there.
right, right. I
um,
don't know what happened, like in their head, what's going on. That if like, do they think that there's a reward for that happening, of like getting like performing the perfect Thanksgiving or the perfect Christmas? That it's just like, I did it. Like there's gonna be some kind of like award ceremony and they get the Oscar for best
right.
Thanksgiving, and it's like, oh, I just want to thank my family, all the people who showed up. Like, I don't get it. Who
Yeah.
cares if it doesn't go perfectly?
Right. Yeah. And I do think that the Goldbergs does a great job of showing, like the mother works so hard on all the food, right?
Yep.
And she makes sure that that there's enough food for everybody, not too much left over, all of that. And then to have somebody get in the way of that plan, and I think that's, what really throws her off. And yeah. And then, of course, you've got the father who's just like, it doesn't matter, come on. Like,
Right. Right.
um, but usually then the episodes do come around and have a fairly sweet ending. Um, usually some, I would say usually they come around to the mother's side of things, but the mother also realizes that things do change, and that there is a level of compromise there.
Yeah.
Um, and it really is good because in the end, it's, usually in the end, then it is, uh, the family is together. They're all experiencing Thanksgiving together, and that's the important thing. Even if not everyone is there, even if, the turkey is done differently than it was before, it doesn't matter. The family had an experience together. They have those memories. That's the important thing.
Right.
And yeah, so I love the way that the Goldbergs depicts that.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Um, okay. We're gonna move on to the next one that I have. We're gonna be doing three each, and I'm just letting you and anybody who's watching know. It's just I'm getting some crazy lighting going on from outside. The sun's doing something funny through the trees here. I'm like, it looks like it's on fire outside. Like if somebody's watching this, they're like, is there a forest fire out there? No, I don't know what's going on. I don't
Oh
have,
dear.
yeah. I've
It,
just got blinds, but it's kind of cutting through the blinds.
thinking that that it could be warm enough for a fire down there, while I look outside and it's just pure white, like just
Right.
snow everywhere.
Is it snowing right now?
I believe so. Yeah, I've got my blinds closed, so I can't really see, but But yeah, no, there's a lot of snow on the ground here. We had ice pellets yesterday, which was
Yeah,
not fun.
I know. I keep hearing about like these awful winter storms, and it's, in Celsius. It's like I got up this morning, it was 15 degrees Celsius, plus 15, folks. And so, you know, but
Yeah,
people in Central Florida are still wearing coats as though it's cold.
right.
I'm not kidding.
And this is why, again, getting back to Thanksgiving,
Yeah,
like nobody would want to drive however far to see relatives twice in the winter in
right.
Canada.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
It's like, oh,
Uh,
it's fall. It's still reasonably warm out. We can still drive and be okay.
Absolutely.
But
That's the great thing about Canadian Thanksgiving, with it being, the second Monday in October, is that it's very, very unlikely you're going to get bad weather. It does happen occasionally, and typically more out west where you're going to get that. But yeah, but
yeah,
generally speaking, it's fairly easy to travel. But the U.S. deals with this all the time, where you get these, awful travel conditions during Thanksgiving.
right.
So.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, meanwhile, up in Canada, we usually, at least in our family, usually on Thanksgiving, we go to the local playground.
Right. Yeah,
Go on the
exactly.
swings, all
Yeah.
that.
All right. So the next show that I want to talk about is The Simpsons. So the Simpsons has not really done a lot with Thanksgiving. They've done one really, really good episode. I think it's called Bart versus Thanksgiving. It's from season two. I think it's season two, episode 7. I was kind of rewatching it before we started the podcast, and uh, it's it is very typical of a season two episode of The Simpsons, where it is much more sentimental than
Mhm.
you get later on. It's much more grounded in reality than what you
Right.
get with the series, especially from, I don't know, I want to say like season 8 to season 10, somewhere in there onwards. Then it just
Hmm.
became something else. And
For sure.
it's
Yeah, I mean, talking about, the lower class family versus the middle class, like The Simpsons definitely started out as a lower class family, and now, they're taking trips around the world and everything.
yeah,
Uh, we'll probably have a Simpsons discussion at some point, but I just
yeah.
wanted to briefly touch on, the fact that it has changed, I think in large part because of their socioeconomic status or perceived socioeconomic status compared to what they actually do.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. Because yeah, now I mean The Simpsons at this point, and for like the past 20 years or so,
Yeah.
it's been essentially like the Barbie approach to television, where it's like Barbie has had every single job imaginable, and it's like,
Right.
where's Barbie getting this education? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
she went to law school, medical school, an astronaut, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
she's done everything, beauty school, all these things, right? And it's like, wait, how is this happening? That's The Simpsons. It's just, if they think that they're going to be able to get any kind of comedy from some kind of gimmick, some kind of wacky situation, then they'll just contrive a plot device to get them into that situation. It was not the case for the first, several seasons. It was
Yeah.
very grounded in reality, and so it had to actually make sense based off of their socioeconomic status. And The Simpsons it does pair really well with Roseanne, and The Simpsons is, kind of, it's an animated show that does in a lot of ways match what you see happening with Roseanne. And it's not that this is the only way to depict a lower class family or more of a dysfunctional family on television, because you have Married with Children that was on at the same time, which is totally different in tone. It's
Right.
completely different. It's not grounded in reality, and it's much more crude and vulgar. Like, a lot of people will say, like, The Simpsons or Roseanne at the time, there's a lot of criticism that they were too crude and vulgar. And then it's like, well, just watch Married with Children. You'll see there's
Yeah.
a big difference there. Um, but yeah, so the Simpsons, what I like is that they, similar to Roseanne, you've got different holiday themed episodes. So kind of aside from season 2, episode 7 with Bart versus Thanksgiving, then Thanksgiving doesn't really feature too prominently in the show, but it is a really good episode because you've got a lot of those themes that we've talked about where there's this expectation of what Thanksgiving should be. And then Lisa, she's made this nice little centerpiece, and then Bart ends up destroying it, and everybody gets mad at him. He goes to his room, he ends up running away, ends up kind of on the street, and then goes to a homeless shelter, and then realizes, oh wow, like these guys have got nothing and I've actually got a pretty decent family, even though they're kind of dysfunctional, and even though I'm a bit of a troublemaker and we don't always get along, because he certainly doesn't get along very well with Lisa, and he doesn't always get along very well with his dad, with Homer, and certainly as the series goes on, less and less so, right, where there's more and more conflict. I'm saying by season 2 you didn't see a lot of that. And
Yeah.
but ultimately him and Lisa, they make up. They end up getting over it, where Lisa has always been the moral center of the series. And you see her trying to teach Bart, not even to teach him, trying to get him to look inwards and to find some kind of compassion for her. And ultimately, he's able to do so. And it's a really nice moment because, you've got Homer and Marge who are kind of listening because Bart and Lisa, they're on the roof of the house, right? Because he goes up into the tree house, sees all of his like toys that got lost on the roof of the house. So he goes up there, and then Lisa ends up hearing something. She goes up, and then that's when they have their talk. And it's one of those, on a show like something like Full House, the talk would be ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? It would just be like, I mean, the end of almost every Full House episode was like, it's like painful to watch, of, Danny Tanner sitting on, what, like the end of a bed of like, one of his kids, like talking to them, and like, oh wow, that fixed everything. Thanks, Dad. But this is one of those things where it's like Lisa's not asking Bart to be perfect. She's not asking him to have the same values that she has, or to be as virtuous as she is. She's just asking, hey, can you just see why this hurt me? Can you just have a little bit of compassion? And there's something really beautiful in that moment of saying, I'm not even asking you to be a different person. I'm just asking you to realize that what you do impacts me. And that's such an important lesson in growing up, of realizing how your actions affect other people. Because children don't think about that. And that's a big part of developing and maturing as a person. Because kids, they are basically as selfish as you can possibly be, like younger children, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it takes I mean, some of them more so than others. But if you're looking at people when it comes to being selfish, then typically we are most selfish when we are children.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We need to grow and develop and learn to empathize and sympathize. It is such a beautiful moment there because, Lisa, asked Bart to just think about it, and he starts out thinking about it, and he's like, okay, fine, and then he's like, oh, it's so stupid that I have to do this. All I did was ruin her stupid. Oh. And it's that beautiful moment of him just thinking to himself, starting out at one place and ending up in a different
place. And and you had said empathize and sympathize, and I think it's much more the sympathy that you get from Bart, which is interesting because he's not going to work on some fancy centerpiece.
Right. Yes.
He's not going to do arts and crafts. He doesn't really have projects that he works on. I mean, he does like make the soapbox derby racer at one point.
Right.
But aside from that, he doesn't build things. He's not a craftsman. He doesn't enjoy that. But Lisa loves things like this, whether it's composing music or writing, or a craft like this. So it's like he can't actually experience what she's experiencing, those feelings, but he's recognizing she's different from me, but that doesn't mean that I can't feel something for what she's going through. And for him to get to that point, it's really great. And it's that nice, it, it's a great Thanksgiving episode, right? And I think that it works really well where you say, even if I am completely different from my family members, even whether you're talking about extended family or your immediate family, to say we're completely different people, we have completely different goals and ambitions and values and whatever else, but I can still care for this person, right?
Yeah, it pairs really well with Home Alone, where at the
Yeah,
beginning, literally everybody in the family is mad at him,
yeah,
but then they all come back and support him at the end. On The Simpsons, and we get it a little bit of a different angle where you know Bart refuses to apologize,
yeah,
and so he's ousted.
yeah.
Because he's just like, what? I didn't do anything, and everybody in the family is mad at him, and yeah, to see him make that journey on his own and come back to the family to make that apology is, yeah, just so satisfying.
Yeah, you're right. That's a really great point. That well, kind of everything that you said, but that it pairs really well with Home Alone. I'm trying to find when this episode was actually released because Home Alone, I just looked it up, and Home Alone came out in wow, they came out almost at the same time. That's
Wow.
pretty remarkable. Um, Home Alone came out November 16th, 1990. And let me just find that actual episode for The Simpsons. Um, because season 2 of The Simpsons was October of 1990, is when it started. So they came out, I think, in the same month.
Wow.
That's
That's really
incredible.
incredible.
Because yeah, they pair so well together. Because this episode of The Simpsons is really basically a miniature version, a condensed version of Home Alone. A
Yeah.
slightly different premise, but it's basically it.
Yeah,
The
in
same
terms of
themes.
the themes and yeah, the emotional
Yeah,
payoff, then yeah.
yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, so that's a great point. All
Yeah.
right, let's move on to the next one for you.
Yeah, I think next will be Everybody Loves Raymond.
Right.
Along the same lines as the Goldbergs, where you have, the
Yeah.
matriarch who is so fully invested in, making food, making sure that everybody is happy and
But
everything.
she's more manipulative, isn't she?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
haven't watched the Goldberg, so I don't know. But I've watched Everybody Loves Raymond, and I know that with Raymond's mother, she's psychologically so manipulative.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, same general idea, but of course we do have this Marie Ray's mother, Marie, then she's always overshadowing Ray's wife, Deborah.
Right.
Um, and even, even on the episodes where it's like, oh, well, this year, Deborah is going to be making Thanksgiving dinner. And then Marie comes over with the full turkey, and she was just like,
Right.
I just thought, I'd bring over a little something. And it's like, oh, come on.
Right. Well, because what did Deborah make? Didn't she make like a tofu turkey? Or
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
did she make a tofu turkey? Or was it like, and maybe it was a different one, because wasn't there also fish instead of turkey?
Mm-hmm. Yep, there was definitely that one.
Is that a different like episode?
I think so. Here, let me just pull it up quickly. And because there have been one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 different Thanksgiving episodes for
No
Everybody Loves
kidding.
Raymond.
Yeah. And
There's
I
turkey
just,
or fish, no
uh-huh.
fat, no thanks, fighting in-laws, older women, Marie's vision, the bird, and Deborah's parents.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
And there is so much that happens, um, even getting beyond just Marie. Then there is also Deborah's family, where
yeah.
uh, on the one episode when they go to Deborah's parents for Thanksgiving, and every year, Deborah's parents or the family does the Thanksgiving play in their house, not for
Right.
anybody, just
Right.
amongst themselves. And or no, it's not even Deborah. Wait, no, it's not Deborah's parents. It's
No, that's
uh
the in-laws.
yeah. Oh my goodness, what was what was Ray's brother's brother's name? Now I can't even remember his name.
Robert. Robert, where
Robert, right?
his wife, her
Yeah.
parents, and her brother,
Yes.
they
Yes.
they put on
Absolutely.
they were such a great addition to the show. Those
Oh,
in-laws.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The highly religious but extremely full house end of the spectrum.
Yes, yes, but the way that ends up contrasting with the
Yes.
Barones is so
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah. Because and I mean there are definitely chinks in the armor that you start to see with Amy.
Yes. Yes, Amy, that's
Yeah,
right.
with Amy's family, they're not as perfect as they try to make themselves seem, and that's really good. And it's partly how much of it is Ray's family,
Yeah.
kind of influencing that. Um, but yeah, so there is all of this where you get three different families altogether then that all have such different views of what Thanksgiving is, what it should be,
Yeah.
whether it's about just food or, about just family being together, doesn't matter what you eat, or whether it's about, celebrating the history of the holiday, with
Right.
yeah, let's do the play and the brother, Amy's brother who like takes off his shirt and is like painted. He's like, I'm Squanto.
Right.
I'm
Right.
always Squanto. Um, and then yeah, Ray just rips off his shirt. He's like, no, this year I'm gonna be Squanto because that's what the kids want.
That's right.
And that is a great moment too. Like, there's so much to talk about with just the Everybody Loves Raymond episodes, like Thanksgiving episodes, because they do it so often, and because it is a great microcosm of what the show is.
Yeah.
Which is about these, the family togetherness, that there's constant clashes. It's all about food, about, yeah, about how much the in-laws should actually be involved
Yeah.
in these families.
Yeah.
And so it works so well in all of these different episodes with all of the different uh, issues that come up.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, that's a great point. Uh, the way you get the conflict is coming from having people who are like having disputes over boundaries, right? Where
Right.
is the
Yes.
boundary when it comes to how much involvement, how much commentary you should be providing on how my family does things compared to your family? And
Yeah.
that is the struggle. And I think Everybody Loves Raymond does a good job of showing what happens as an immediate family grows, as it expands
Hmm.
outward, right? Because then Robert does meet Amy, and then you start incorporating her family, and you've got, Deborah's family and Ray's family. And it's like, okay, well, how do you get all these different families who've all got very different dynamics, and now how do they all interact together?
Yeah.
And
They've all got different values, different, yeah, uh, uh, essentials for the holiday, and they
yeah,
conflict with each other so well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And like a good, like a fairly healthy conflict,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
it's not vicious or anything like that. It's
Hmm.
yeah.
And it is something where I love it because in in a lot of media, then if you get big conflicts like they have, because they are big conflicts, even though they more or less get resolved. There is a lot of anger there. Um, so even though you get all of that, you don't have, you know, uh, 20 years later, oh, I haven't spoken to,
Right.
them in this long, or oh, we decided, that we just can't do the holidays there because there's too much fighting. No, there isn't any of that. They're a family. They're going to keep trying to make it work. Like
Exactly.
they're several families, but blended into one. And yeah, they're going to keep trying to make it work year after year. And
Right.
it is, again, as an immediate family expands, then you do get those conflicts. I mean, in our family, with four kids, then obviously there's a lot of difficulty over, which kids are going to be able to come back for Thanksgiving, which household do you spend Thanksgiving in, who makes, the turkey and
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, like sometimes when we go to Aunt Lisa's place, but other most of the time then we're here, and it's just yeah, it's constantly trying to make it work, and there is no perfect solution, and there's always conflict every single time. But in the end, everybody's eating together, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, and even if everybody's not eating together, right? Where you've
Right.
got, no, we're gonna like this, group, we're gonna be spending Thanksgiving or Christmas with, his in-laws or her in-law or like his parents or her parents, right? Then that's part of it too, of
Yeah.
an immediate family becoming separate immediate families.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, Everybody Loves Raymond does such a good job of depicting that in a fairly realistic way, while at the same time not making it too heavy and
Right.
making it entertaining, right?
Oh yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's hysterical, but it is still, it's hysterical for all the right reasons, where you're watching it and you're just like, yeah, that's so what would actually happen.
right.
It's so believable
Yeah,
that it's
absolutely.
funny.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, we're gonna move on to my third one, if you're good with that.
Yep.
Okay, so my third one is King of the Hill. So King of the Hill has done multiple Thanksgiving episodes, and King of the Hill is a bit of a departure from my first two choices with Roseanne and The Simpsons, but you've got you still have similar themes that come up with King of the Hill, where you've got this vision of what Thanksgiving should be, right? And then what it ultimately ends up being. But you've got a couple different episodes in there. So one of them, then you've got um, John Redcorn, who is, of course, the real father to Joseph, right? Because you've got
Yeah.
Nancy and Dale, and they've got their son Joseph. But the real father is John Redcorn because Nancy's been having this affair for basically the entire marriage. So he wants, and he's kind of getting frustrated because he's going to be spending Thanksgiving alone for another year. He seems to have like no, like either his parents have already passed away or he doesn't have a relationship with them, no siblings, no significant other because that's Nancy.
Right.
Joseph is his kid. Like, so he's just kind of like living in a trailer by himself and he's frustrated and he's like, I want to have a relationship with my son. I want to be a part of this and be a part of his life. So then he figures, oh, well, I could kind of work my way into his life and also to teach Joseph about his Native American background, his heritage.
Hmm.
So then, but he can't make it seem like he's just, hey Joseph, I'm your dad and you're actually Native
Right.
American, right? So instead what he does
Yeah.
is he's like, okay, well, I'll teach both Bobby and Joseph about my people's ancestry and our culture, our heritage. And so then Bobby gets into this. Joseph doesn't care at all. And then Bobby ends up protesting Thanksgiving, saying, you massacred like, my people, the white people have massacred Native American people. And then he's like, we need to celebrate Native American culture. And so because he looked it up in an anthropology textbook, he found out that at one point, then John Redcorn's tribe, then they participated in cannibalism. So then Bobby's trying to get everybody to eat people, like not actually serving people, but saying, hey, this is an important part of his heritage. And I've learned in school that you have to respect a person's heritage. Right? You have to respect a person's culture. And so that's basically Thanksgiving for them. Right. And desperately trying to get Bobby to understand, like Hank is desperately trying to get him to understand that eating people is wrong. And of course, John Redcorn is appalled by this. He's saying this hasn't happened in like however long, like thousands of years and whatever else. But
Yeah.
it's such a fun examination of the conflict of, because like, and this is back in the 90s, right?
Right.
And now you see more and more people who are pushing against Thanksgiving, especially American Thanksgiving, because Canadian Thanksgiving has got a different background, a different history, so it's not the same thing as American Thanksgiving. And the idealized, glossy version of the first Thanksgiving, right, with the Pilgrims and the Native American people. And I'm saying Native American for anybody, any Canadian who's listening. I understand it is Aboriginal or First Nation, but in the US and they say Native American. So it's like, I know those are the terms that we prefer. They go with Native American. So I'm trying not to be offensive to any particular First Nations, Aboriginal, or Native American people. Genuine. It's hard to use the right term depending on your audience.
Right. Yeah.
So in any case, you've got that story, and the way it's kind of getting worked with in King of the Hill back then is really fun, because King of the Hill, one of the things, and Mike Judge is so good at this. He's the creator of the show, and he does the voice of Hank, among others. And so you've got, what it does is it looks at, it kind of follows through the logic of both liberals and conservatives, and it just says, okay, this is what you're insisting upon, this is the principle, and it's like, yes, and it's like, let's follow this through to the most, like, it's reductio ad absurdum in a lot of ways, or let's take this as literally as possible. And it's, King of the Hill is such a great satire of liberal attitudes and politically correct attitudes, but also conservative attitudes, right?
Right.
It's skewering kind of everyone, and in a way that is so satisfying, because it doesn't feel cheap or underhanded. It's not like you didn't think this through. It's like, no, you really thought this through, right? When you've got like left-wing people who will say that, you have to respect a person's culture. And then Bobby's like, I found out this particular thing about their culture. And then John Redcorn's like, but that's not our culture anymore. And it's like, but it was. So we have to honor and respect this. And it's perfectly valid. And then it's like, is it? It's such a, it's a great thing where it's like, you've got the Native American person saying, well, just because I'm Native American doesn't mean that everything that my people have done from the beginning of time has been admirable, right?
Right.
Because you've got some people who will idealize what it means to be First Nations. And then you've got other people who ignore that history entirely, and they just avoid talking about, the atrocities done against Native American people and the decimation of their people from the influx of Europeans, both intentional and unintentional, with the conflict between them. And it's like King of the Hill is just like putting it all right there for its Thanksgiving episode. And I'm just like, this is brilliant.
Yeah. No, it is really, really great, because as we've mentioned in so many of these other series, then they focus so much on the traditions of Thanksgiving and not on the history. And so it's great to see a series that actually does explore the complicated origins of the holiday.
Yeah. And it does it in a way, like I say, that's not heavy-handed, that's fun, and it's a good satire in a lot of ways. The other one that I just wanted to briefly mention is, you do have one of my other favorite Thanksgiving episodes is where they're traveling for Thanksgiving and then they all get stranded at the airport because of delays with the flights. And I'm sure a lot of people, this year have dealt with that. And so what ends up happening, so it's a fun episode where it's like them, being frustrated at the airport because you get all these different people. You've got the Supernussenpones who are there, you've got the Hills who are there. Bill, he has nobody for Thanksgiving, so he just like comes back to the airport to hang out with them because they're stranded there, but he pretends that he has a relative that he's waiting for, where he's waiting for his
Right.
flight. You've got Dale and Nancy and Joseph, so you've got the Gribbles who are there. And in the end, they end up having this like very, very small Thanksgiving meal where, Hank, has got this small little propane tank, and they kind of make I don't know, I think it's an apple brown Peggy is what she calls it, instead of an apple brown Betty. um, but it's a fun one to see them, the frustration with traveling and traveling during the holidays, but then at the same
Yeah.
time to see these different people who are all coming together to because they have more in common
Right.
than they do in terms of differences. And I think it's just, and that's where King of the Hill it does such a great job of, it will surprise you with the profundity at times, with its own profundity, where it's like you don't see it coming, and then you're just like, oh, that was really profound. You're watching the show, you're kind of following along, you're like, this is funny, this is funny, this is funny. Then you're like, whoa, that was kind of heavy. I wasn't actually expecting that. Because when you're looking at it, then you say, you've got the Supernussenpones, where they're going to have a very different Thanksgiving than the Hills are going to have, than the Gribbles are going to have, and Bill's got no one. And I think John Redcorn was at the airport as well, and they're all so different, but then they all come together. And I'm like, in a lot of ways, that's kind of the story of America, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's a really good point. Uh, I mean, obviously, um, also, the story of Thanksgiving, but more
Yes.
broadly than, yes, America.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is the story of Thanksgiving. They're doing that with their Thanksgiving episode, but then I'm saying, kind of expanding it outwards. Then it's like, no matter how different people are, and Thanksgiving is, I think, to me, it's my favorite holiday because
Yeah.
it's the most inclusive. And it's
Yeah.
the most inclusive in that there's really nothing required of you. That, like, we don't have to like share the
Yeah.
same religion, the same, ethnic or cultural background. It's just like, hey, are you thankful for something? Great. Don't work today. Meet up with your family, extended family and friends, and have a nice meal, and just appreciate the fact that you're in a pretty safe place to live, and you've got people who care about you, and just express gratitude. Take some time to reflect, and to express gratitude. It's like, who can have a problem with that? There's no expectation of buying gifts. There's no insistence on, you have to believe this particular, religious thing, or anything else. It's,
Yeah.
how can you not appreciate that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do often refer to Thanksgiving as my favorite holiday as well. And I mean, part of that, I'm sure, is because growing up, we did not celebrate Christmas or anything, and
Right.
and so it was the more or less the one time a year where you did get to see family. And yeah, just it's it is accessible to absolutely anybody.
Yeah.
Where it's just, do you want to have a nice meal with other people that you care about? Cool.
Yeah.
That's that's all
and
the
and
day is.
not work. You're like,
Right.
I like to not work and to eat. Right? It's like, how can you not like that?
Yeah.
um, all right, let's
Yeah.
hear yours. Your third one.
Yeah, so my third one is from Eight Simple Rules. Now this series, it had three different seasons, and I believe between seasons one and two, then the main character, more or less, John Ritter, then the actor passed away, and they managed to keep going with the show by addressing the fact that the father in the series had actually suddenly passed away.
Mm.
And the way that they address that is really, really lovely. Like it's very uh, it, it changes the show so much. It has a totally different feel after that happens. And so the first season, every single season has a Thanksgiving episode. I should mention that. Um, and in the first season, then Paul, played by John Ritter again, then then he wants to, just have the girls there, and he's the father who doesn't want his kids, well, certainly not the girls, to be dating or anything
Mm.
like that, right? Very protective over them. So he's like, yeah, I just want it to be, close family, just have a nice Thanksgiving dinner, and then the one daughter, Carrie, comes down from her room with her boyfriend, and so then it's like, oh, well, we were thinking that maybe he could stay for Thanksgiving dinner. And of course, Paul is just like, why was he in her room and all
Right.
this, right? Like
Right.
freaking out. And doesn't want this to be a thing at all. He doesn't want, you know, getting into relationships and everything. So it's all about that level of being protective over his daughters, which I think is really great because you do see it from multiple perspectives. From the daughter of just being like, this person is somebody important to me, and I want him to feel like he's part of the family.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so that's more or less the first season. The second season, after the passing of John Ritter, this Thanksgiving is all about trying to have Thanksgiving that feels normal,
Mm.
even after they've lost
Mm.
the father figure,
Yeah.
the husband, and it is uh, it is challenging, of course, because it
Right.
won't be the same, and trying to have that kind of holiday when you're missing somebody who is so
Mm.
important,
Hmm.
uh, so central to that tradition is obviously very difficult, um, and emotional. So we get that as the framework, and then you have I forget whether it's one or both of the daughters kind of being like, I want to have Thanksgiving at my boyfriend's house.
Mm.
And it's because they don't want to experience Thanksgiving without their father there. But you don't get that
Right.
immediately. It is just, oh no, 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 I thought that, yeah, I just have it, at the boyfriend's house. That should be
Right.
fine, right? And the mother is like, no, 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 like you guys have to all be here. We can still have like a normal Thanksgiving, and it's everybody trying to get along without without Paul, and
Mm.
uh, it's fascinating to see that play out, and I think really well done. Very, uh, it is still a sitcom, but
I
it
was
has
gonna
so much.
say, is it
It,
funny?
it is funny. It does still have like a lot of humor, but there is still kind of the broader scope of things, having these touching moments, and
Right.
coming together with these, and it does sort of fall into what we had talked about at the beginning with like Full House and all that. But I think because of the severity of what has actually taken place in their house, then it
Mm.
changes things so much.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot of humor, and it's definitely still a funny show,
Right.
but I think that it is more of a dramedy than a sitcom.
That makes sense. Can I just add something to this?
For sure.
So it's okay. I can't remember who the stand-up comedian is. So I'm saying this is not my routine in any way, but I don't know who the stand-up comedian is who made this joke, but he said something about something along the lines of Some people will say that stand-up comedy has to be funny to be comedy, to be stand-up
Mm,
comedy. And then he's
yeah.
like, I disagree. And he's like, if and it is interesting. His point here is he said, it's like imagine if you said to a band, I didn't like that song, I didn't groove. I'm not even sure that was music. Or to say to like a movie, like to say like I didn't like it, I didn't like the performances, and I didn't really like the characters. I'm not even sure it was a movie. He's like, we don't do this with anything else. We don't say I don't think it was the thing that it was trying to be. And and you've seen this expand outwards in terms of stand-up comedy, and I think that it applies to sitcoms as well, where you've got a lot of comedians now where you're seeing more and more variety, where some of them, it's not the many of them are not delivering one-liners anymore, right?
Right.
And some of them are more humorous, where they will
Yeah.
tell stories, long stories that are humorous, but they're not necessarily going to generate, huge outbursts of laughter where you're just kind of smirking as you're listening or watching it, right? Watching the
Absolutely.
performance. And I think that a sitcom, like I think Everybody Loves Raymond does that as well, where Everybody Loves Raymond, I think, is a very humorous show, if not necessarily always a really laugh out loud funny show.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I would say that that more or less applies to Eight Simple Rules as well.
Yeah.
And it is worth noting that um, the original title for the series was Eight Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter,
Right.
and it is based on a book as well, or a series of books. I'm not sure. No, anyway, I believe it's just one book, but anyway. But yeah, so it is a humorous show that delves into, the crux of what is it to be a family and to go on being a family after, a tragic event.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's interesting because the third season, then that Thanksgiving episode, I think is a little it falls a little flat in
Mm.
those areas. It focuses on the cousin who has come to live with them, uh, and the grandfather also comes to live with them after the passing of Paul. But so the third season is about there was this fire in the garage, and it definitely wasn't the turkey deep fryer that the cousin had
Right.
out there. Yeah, and so it's just really, it's really kind of it's told in an interesting way because it's a reflective narrative where it starts out at the end and it's basically told in flashbacks. It's like, well, how what happened next? What happened next? It's that sort of the insurance person asking all of these questions about how the events of the night unfolded, and we kind of get
Right.
different perspectives on what happened from each of the different characters.
Right.
Um, but in general, it doesn't focus so much on the Thanksgiving aspect as much as the other uh, two seasons. So it's just kind of interesting the way that that plays out.
Right.
Yeah.
That is interesting as like just a three-season series, and to see kind of three different takes on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to reiterate one point, and then I want to give an honorable mention. Okay.
Yeah.
So if somebody who's like really really familiar with television history can comment on this, if there is a series before Roseanne that
Mm.
did establish, you know you look at the calendar in terms of your release dates, and I know that other sitcoms did this, I know that they did, but I'm saying, did they do it as well as what Roseanne did? um, because like those Roseanne Halloween episodes were so great, and the Thanksgiving ones, they fit so well. in the series, and they match up with each other, where you could kind of watch one and then watch the next year and watch the next year and watch the next year. You could watch them in that viewing order, and I think it'd be rewarding and interesting, where they don't really feel gimmicky. It
Right.
feels like, of course, like every family at this time of year deals with, like, not deals with, but at this time of year has Thanksgiving and all of the good and bad that comes with that. So, of course, the Connors are going to do this. And then you end up seeing this with all the shows that we've talked about since then. That, I just wanted to say that I think a lot of credit should be given to the creators and writers of Roseanne for establishing what you end up getting with television for really the last like 30 years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I am curious if somebody can comment on other shows that have done a better job. Like, I mean, I've watched a lot of All in the Family. I've probably seen every episode of that. I can't really remember Thanksgiving episodes. I don't really remember it with Cheers, because Cheers was a situation comedy. It's all taking place in a bar, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah, I did see that Cheers has a couple of Thanksgiving episodes,
In
but
a
as
bar.
to right, yeah. But as to how much, is actually about Thanksgiving,
Right.
it is definitely different, with all of these series that we've talked about, they're all about uh, families. And
Yeah.
that's really what Thanksgiving is. And it is interesting how, shows beforehand, such as All in the Family or um, uh, any number of family sitcoms before, didn't necessarily have the same kind of focus uh, on the families getting together and the troubles of family getting together for the holidays,
Right.
um, specifically Thanksgiving, as well as dealing with an expanding family and how do
Yeah.
you incorporate new members and
Exactly. And Roseanne did that. Like, it did that
yeah,
really well. You had grandparents. You've got Dan's, father who's there, and Roseanne's mother, and then her grandmother, and and then you have like Darlene or Becky with like Mark, who then starts coming to Thanksgiving, and then you get Darlene with David, who starts coming, and it's just like the dynamics just get messed up, like
yeah,
the more they try to do this, right? And
yeah,
it's Roseanne was doing this, I think, before other shows were doing this.
right, yeah, yeah, and it is it is so true to life,
Yeah,
where you get that at least in our family. That's the experience that I'm speaking from, obviously, but it's every year you feel like maybe you've finally figured out how it's going to work perfectly,
right,
but then there's a change for the following year.
exactly,
Somebody new is added to the family or something,
right,
um, and it changes that entire dynamic. And so
yeah,
with some of these some of the shows, that I talked about specifically, then um, people trying to hold on to those traditions and having to deal with the fact that things are changing is a huge part of what makes these series so good at them. I mean, Eight
yeah,
Simple Rules, like it's a difference of a family member, or an additional two family members in exchange for one, and it's still trying to hold on to those traditions despite the changes.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's it's something that television, this is something that I really wanted to bring up. Television is able to do so much better than film.
yeah,
Um, Seeing these changes from year to year to year to year.
yeah,
And I mean, there certainly are, I'm sure, some Thanksgiving films. One in particular that comes to mind is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which we almost did talk about.
right,
But outside of that, it's really hard to think of a good Thanksgiving film that's about Thanksgiving or the spirit of Thanksgiving or what have you.
yeah,
Um, it's it's hard because it's about all these different family members that you need to know individually,
that's
how
right,
they clash and come together.
That's
And
right.
for it to not feel hammy and all that involves you knowing all of those characters, knowing their relationships in a regular setting in order for it to work
Yes.
well for Thanksgiving.
That's a great point. Yeah, because it's completely unwieldy in film that you would have to not only establish so many characters, but you're right, you'd have to establish who they are in ordinary settings, not this holiday setting, and not when
Yeah,
everybody's all getting together.
yeah,
And then you have to show them of how they actually interact on this day. And then even if you do that in one film, then that's only 1 year of Thanksgiving. But
right. Yeah,
to try to show, because like television can tell different stories than
hmm
film, and
yeah,
this is one of the real strengths of television when it comes to, because we were trying to think of different this is just for people who are listening. We were trying to think of different movies that focus on Thanksgiving, and we kind of realized there's not really good Thanksgiving movies, but there's so much
yeah.
good Thanksgiving television in terms of TV series and these episodes. And I would be curious what would happen if you looked at other shows as well. What happens if you kind of focus in on different holidays, but if you just say, and I mean, like I know like The Simpsons has done this, like where for Halloween, then you'll have like the Comedy Network that it'll be like, all right, we're gonna do however many days leading up to Halloween of a different Halloween episode of The Simpsons each night, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
you could do that with different holidays of, all right, you've got the Thanksgiving ones, let's watch that. Let's watch the Christmas ones. And
hmm
yeah,
And for Groundhog Day, you just have to watch the movie Groundhog Day.
that's right. That's right. That's an easy day.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, no, it's fantastic that television is able to do this, and I do think that there are certain series that do it better than others, just based on the fact that they, in general, focus on family as opposed to, you know, plot of the week.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I guess one thing that I mean, obviously, traditional network television continues to exist and cable television continues to exist. Premium cable is a different story, but it does change things when you have so many streaming platforms where they just release all of the episodes for the entire season all at once. Because
yeah,
what you end up getting, and I think Stranger Things is a good example of this, but I've seen it with a couple other shows. Basically, you figure out, well, when is this going to be released in the calendar year, and then this entire season is going to focus around that particular time of year,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it wouldn't make sense to watch something that you're going to binge watch where it's going to be, let's say, 12 episodes, and then you're like, all right, but you're going to get to see like the back to school one, and then you're going to see the Halloween one, and then the Thanksgiving one, and then the Christmas one, right? Like that you're going to have all
yeah,
these different episodes. That it wouldn't make sense, because people are like, but that's not where we're at in the calendar. So I think
for sure.
that's kind of changed the way like television is telling stories, insofar as like our streaming services where it's just being released on a streaming platform. Is that even television? Like, what is that?
Right.
Because it's not on
Yeah,
television, it's on your
yeah,
computer.
yeah.
Right.
Series.
Yeah, series storytelling. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
it just kind
yeah.
of throws a monkey wrench in the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. It is interesting, and I think that that is as sad as it may be. I think that we have left the golden era of of sitcoms being able to tell those uh,
Yeah.
season specific or holiday specific episodes in the midst of a full season. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely still happening, but I think that it was so predominant
Yeah.
throughout the 90s and early 2000s before
Agreed.
we got the advent of streaming and people started to be like, oh well, we need to adjust, and yeah, well, that episode wouldn't really work so well if somebody's binging the series
Exactly.
even after the fact, right? Like, even if it comes out at that
Mm,
specific time, then when people are watching it years from now,
yeah.
then it changes things.
You are right, and I mean, and at the same time, I think there's also a little bit of we're seeing the pendulum start to swing back just a little bit with Disney Plus and
Hmm.
releasing episodes weekly. And I think that this is providing people with a very different experience, and it's going back to traditional television of we're having to sit with an episode for an entire week. And it's not just The Mandalorian; they're doing that with their other shows as well, their other
Mm,
original series. Um,
right.
I know they're at least doing it with Jeff Goldblum's show,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm presuming they're doing it with other ones as well.
Yeah, I think probably, uh, yeah, probably, but I haven't really checked out the
Right.
other shows.
And I think there are some other streaming platforms that have been experimenting with this as well. Like I know Netflix has done this with a few different shows where you'll
Yeah,
have the episode air on television and then on Netflix kind of at the same time, and so you get
yeah,
the weekly release. So it's an interesting thing, but yeah, you really do get to see what television can do when it comes to storytelling that film just really isn't able to do. Because
yeah,
we usually just give so much credit to film, but
yeah,
I've always been a big defender of television and television storytelling because I think there's just so much great television writing. Um,
absolutely.
and people talk about the
Yeah.
dramas all the time, and certainly like there's been incredible dramas from television, but um, there's some really good stories from sitcoms as well.
This was a really fun experiment to talk about just one holiday as seen through a few different
Yeah,
sitcoms.
yeah, and I want to know what other people think of this because we're continuing to experiment and try different things on the podcast. So
Yeah.
if you like this, or if you have ideas for other thematic episodes, then
Mhm.
because we did kind of our Veterans Day, Remembrance Day one with World War
Yep.
II films, and that was I liked doing that, and then the Thanksgiving one, and we'll very likely do something for Christmas and maybe a New Year's one.
Yep.
you know and like I don't know, we'll continue to work on it, but if you folks have got ideas, and please let us know. I mean,
For
like
sure.
every day is now like some kind of special like day,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like we'll do like a Secretary's Day episode and you know what I mean, like
I think we already did that. It's called The Office.
yeah, that's right, that's right.
Um, yeah, but also let us know your favorite Thanksgiving episodes or series that have involved Thanksgiving episodes. I'm not even sure what we're going to title this episode yet because it's so it is a list of the best of Thanksgiving, but
Yeah,
it's just yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's fun. So let us know your favorites. If you like Full House, let us know, and we will immediately dislike your comment.
there's there's no way that somebody who watches my podcast likes Full House. I can't believe that's true. Um, I just wanted to give an honorable mention though. So
Right.
the honorable mention that I want to give is Friends. So Friends did do different episodes that are good
Sure.
Thanksgiving episodes, and specifically the best Friends moment to do with Thanksgiving is when Joey has the turkey stuck on his head, which was a complete ripoff from Mr. Bean.
Yeah.
Uh, but I feel like what, like and then you get it on The Office where Dwight has the pumpkin stuck on his head. Right. I
Right.
love when he's walking to the car with that thing on his head. Just gets in the car. I just want to say, like, I'm perfectly fine with this. I don't care how much repetition we get. Just keep putting things on people's heads. I will laugh every time.
Yes, that's a good point, especially when Monica puts on the
The
sunglasses on
sunglasses.
the turkey.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, no, good shout out there because that is a long-running series that definitely did a lot of different Thanksgiving episodes and
Yeah.
ones that are, as much as the series is called Friends, they are a family of friends.
Yeah, they become they essentially are acting as a family, just a non-traditional family. But yeah, it is. You do have. It's an interesting one with the Thanksgiving episodes because of that.
For sure.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for watching, and please, like we said, shout out some of your favorite Thanksgiving moments, and if you have suggestions for other thematic episodes, then please let us know. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Ignore the people. We're gonna keep going. Still ignoring it. Don't worry. I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.